Okay, so this video tutorial is going to be about how to create a header background image for your WordPress blog. And I'm going to gear this to people who don't know anything about HTML or CSS. So that way, pretty much anybody of any skill level, as long as you have Photoshop or another imaging program that you know better than Photoshop, you can figure this out. So the first thing you have to do is dissect your current blog theme and get some information out of your style sheet. And how you're going to do that is if you look at my blog right here, you can see there's a couple of different areas. You have this top area right up here, and then you have the area here where the logo and the advertisement is, and then you have this nav bar where all the links are in the search form, and then you have all the content. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what sizes all this stuff is, and to do that we're going to look at the style sheet and also the HTML code. Now in Firefox, hit Command or Control U, and you're going to bring up the source code. And the first thing you want to find is the name of your style sheet. So we're going to look right down here and find a link rel style sheet, and we're going to look for the one that has WP-content themes, and then the name of your theme, and then style.css. Okay, that's going to be your style sheet. There's going to be some other style sheet entries in here, but they're going to be for plugins or things of that nature, so you don't have to worry about those. Once we have that, we're going to find the body tag in our code. We're just going to scroll down until we find the HTML body tag, which looks just like that. Okay? Underneath body, we're going to start dissecting it line by line to figure out what all this stuff on the blog is. So we have main, then we have top nav bar. Well, that just sounds like this area right up here, and sure enough, if you look, top nav bar left, date.js, that's a JavaScript that generates the date. So now we basically know that this area right up here is going to be top nav bar. Going down a little further, we got header, and I'm guessing it's this area right here. Sure enough, look at that. There's my logo.png. There's my logo. And then right here is an advertisement. There's the advertisement. So everything between header, that whole area right there, is going to be the area from right here below the top nav bar to the top of the nav bar right there. And then guess what? Next section, nav bar. Let's make sure nav bar left. We can just look through the code and see home, about Terry, my gear, portfolio. Look, all those names right there. So now we know that anything within navbar is going to be from right there to right there. And then underneath that we have wrap and then content, which that begins all this area right here. So basically right there off of our source code, now we know what each of these little areas are called. Now we're going to close the source code, and actually we're going to open it up because I forgot to tell you to copy the location of the style sheet. Okay, so here's your style sheet. Just select your whole style sheet line right there and hit Control C or Command C to copy that. Now when you close your source code, just put that right into your address bar. Boom, there's your source code. There's a couple of things we need to figure out here. First one is we're going to look at the body tag, and we're going to get the background color. Now colors in CSS or HTML, there's a bunch of different ways of doing it, but mainly there's going to be a pound sign and then the hex code, the 6-entry hex for that color, RGB. So the first two is the red, the second two is the green, and then the last two are the blue. And the background, as you can see from my blog, it was gray. C1, 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 that's the background color. Now, moving on, we're going to keep going, and the next thing we're going to look for is the main. Okay, and then under main, we're going to look at background again. There's my color. And then here's a URL, image, but we're going to look at right here, bg.png. That's the name of the file. Okay, that's the name of the file that we're going to want to save our background as once we're done with it. And if you notice this repeat X, I'll tell you about that in just a minute, but just take note of that. Now we're going to go down and we're going to find those different things that we had found in the code. Top nav bar, height is 30 pixels. Okay, make note of that. Find the next thing that we had looked for, which was header. Height, 100 pixels. Make a note of that. Now find the nav bar that we had found in the source code. There's nav bar, height, 40 pixels. Okay, so now we know, if we go back to my site here, we know that this area right up here is 30 pixels tall. From right there to right there is 100, and then from right there to right there is 40. Now if you look at my graphic, I actually have this blue area combined. So I combined the header and the nav bar area, and then I even dropped it down just a little bit further. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I decided to do that from a design decision. But that's all up to you. But now what we're going to do is we're going to actually start creating that graphic. We're going to go into Photoshop. We're going to say File, New, And we're going to select, make sure it's selected on pixels. And for width, we're just going to say 100 pixels. And the reason is because remember that repeat -X that I showed you? What that means is that background image is going to be spanned, or is going to be replicated or repeated horizontally across the top of the blog. So you don't need to make the width, 1024 or 1800 or 1600 pixels to fill up the whole thing. That's going to be a larger file, take longer to load. Make it 100 pixels, it'll be really fast to load, and then that CSS code is going to repeat it across the screen. As for the height, we're going to need a height as high as we need it to be. Now remember, it was 30, 100, and then 40 pixels to the bottom of the nav bar, right here. Okay, so that's going to be 170 pixels. I want my graphic to go down just a little bit further, and then even a little bit further beyond that, just that way we can tie it in with the rest of the site. Okay, so I'm going to make mine 250 pixels tall, 72 pixels per inch, RGB color 8-bit, and say OK. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to create a couple layers right away. Okay, I'm going to create a couple, and I'm going to call this one my top nav bar, which is that top area. I'm going to take this one to be my header. Now remember, I combined my header and my nav bar, but if you don't want to, you can create another one for nav bar. And then create one more for, just call it, grad for gradient. And I'll show you what that means in just a minute. So now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our top nav bar area. I'm going to take my rectangular marquee tool. I'm going to say fixed size, 0 pixel feathering. My width is going to be 100 pixels. And my height on this is going to be just 30 pixels for that first top area. I'm going to go ahead and click, drag it all the way up to the top. And now I'm going to fill it with some color. I'm just going to fill it with black, Control Command Backspace, and filled it with black because that's my background color. Control D to unselect it. Go over to your header color. Now remember, like I said, I combined my header and my nav bar. Okay? If you don't want to do that, then just say you want just the header. Then what you're going to do is you're going to come up, use your rectangular marquee tool, and say height is going to be 100. Slide that right up there. And now when you fill that, that's going to fill in that 100 pixels of your header, and then nav bar, you're going to do 40 pixels below that. But I'm going to kind of show you what I did. I'm going to get rid of my nav bar, and then for header, I'm going to use not 140, because remember, 140 is going to be from right here below the top nav bar to below the sub nav bar. I want it to come all the way down to here, so I'm going to call it 160 or 165. So height is going to be 165 pixels. And I'm going to do that right there, and I'm going to fill that with some blue color, or whatever color I want. For this one, I'll just go ahead and use like a green color right about there. That looks good for now. And then Control D to unselect. Now for the gradient, if you remember, the background color was C1, C1, C1. So I'm going to create another layer, or you could fill your background layer, either way. But I'm going to show you why I'm going to do it this way real quick. I'm going to use layer 1, edit, fill, a color, and I'm going to use C1, C1, C1. Okay, okay. Now if you notice, the reason I didn't do this earlier is because it completely blends in with the rest of my Photoshop window here. So I'm just going to turn that off for right now. But the key that we want to do for the gradient, though, is we're going to select a foreground color, and we're going to go to, say, C1, C1, C1 again, and then we're going to bring it just a little bit darker. That might be a little too dark. Like right up in that area right there. So it's just a little bit of a darker gray. I'm going to select my gradient tool. I'm going to select my foreground to transparent selection. And now I'm going to start on my gradient layer right here. I'm going to put it right, you can go underneath this because it's, the header, the top part's going to overshadow it anyway. I'm going to go down to right about here. Don't go all the way to the bottom, but go down just a little bit. So now when I turn on my background, as you can notice, let me zoom in a little bit. See how you get this nice little shading effect that goes down to gray? And it's going to blend in with the rest of the site really nice. So if you look at my site here, if you notice there's a little bit of a shade right here, and then it just kind of like blends right into the site right there, and then the rest is covered by that background color defined in that tab, or in the CSS. We'd be able to do here. Once you're completely done with all that stuff, make sure you turn your gray layer on here, and then save it as a PNG file, PNG-24. Go ahead and save it as bg.png. And then once you have that file saved, just upload it using an FTP program or Dreamweaver. Upload it into your theme under the image directory that's under your themes. again, if you go to your style sheet, if you notice this is my theme URL right here, where my style sheet is, and then I'm going to copy that, and then what I'm going to add to that is the images here. Because remember, your images, if you notice, there's my background image right there, so I want my bg.png to be saved in that directory right there on my web server. Once you do that, go ahead and save that, and then refresh your blog, and you'll see the new header up top. And that's it.